Hello and welcome to BQ Prime. I'm Hiral Daria. Joining us on the show today is Mr. Sudarshan Jain, Secretary General at Indian Pharmaceutical Alliance, joining in. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jain. And it's a pleasure to speak to you and understand from you as to what's going to be the impact of COVID, specifically, which is spreading in China on the API industry and the demand and supply with regards to the Indian markets go. Mr. Jain, my first question coming to you is firstly, how significant is the contribution of China to with regards to API demand for India?
So thank you very much, Hiral. The surge of COVID cases in China is an area of concern, which indicates that COVID is not yet over. We have to be conscious of that fact, and all of us in India should take all COVID appropriate behavior instead of getting into crowds, mixing, masking. All those become very important. I'd like to thank once again Government of India, which is very, very proactive, and the Health Secretary issued the alert, and Health Minister has again emphasized the importance of COVID appropriate behavior. So the first point is that for us, in order to continue our economic activities, which are important for the growth of the country, we should make sure that we don't get entangled into the COVID situation again. We have undertaken the biggest COVID immunization program in the country, vaccination program in the country. We are proud of that fact. We have been able to contain COVID much better than any other part of the world. Again, we are proud of the fact. And it is an example for the world how we have dealt with COVID. We should again demonstrate at this time. The first part from our side is the COVID appropriate behavior. That's point number one. Point number two is there is a surge in the COVID cases, which may lead to the pressure on the API supplies from China. And the turbulence from China, which we are having for last 3 years, right from the day COVID was announced, that the prices have been fluctuating. And we were thinking that there will be a stabilization of that process. Fortunately, Government of India announced PLI scheme, Production Linked Incentive Scheme. Many of the companies are participating in that, but it will take time because we have lost competitive advantage to China. Around 70% of the imports of APIs take from China and the intermediates. So overall process will take time. A good part of the story is that Indian companies have learned hell of a lot from the past COVID experience. So large Indian companies, they are maintaining the inventories. So in the short run, we will not have an impact on the availability of particularly antibiotics and vitamins, which we source from China. But we have to be conscious of the fact, we have to be alert, we have to keep vigilance, and that is the important thing, not only for supplies in India, but supplies globally, because we have to realize that the whole world depends on India from supply of formulations.
Right. So overall, currently, as you mentioned, that there is a lot of dependence in terms of China supply, China supplying to India. Though Indian companies are building capacities and the government is supporting them through the PLI scheme, however, the capacities to come into production is something which will still take some time. So, from a pricing perspective, right now, what we're hearing is that the prices have gone up by almost around 20 to 25%, specifically with regards to, say, paracetamol or amoxicillin goes. And if you look at azithromycin and potassium clovelinate, it's almost a 20 to 25% increase. So, how are you seeing the trend from here on from a pricing perspective?
So whenever there is a demand surge, the laws of economy applies. The supply is uncertain, demand is going up, so the prices moves up. And we are aware we faced a similar kind of situation for 2 years back. And we should also remember that all these products, many of these products are price controlled products, right? And so, but the country interest was very important for pharma industry. So the companies have been continuously manufacturing this product. If the prices goes up, it does not mean that you can take the final prices up, because from a consumer point of view, from patient point of view, you can't increase the price, because if the prices of raw materials goes up, it is the viability of those products get impacted. Nevertheless, uh, the companies during this time, they work very closely with the government and make sure that the supplies of the medicine take place, not only in India, but globally. Because we know that every third tablet in US is sold from India, every fourth tablet in Europe is sold from India. And we have a strong obligation to make sure that the supplies of medicine takes place from India. And that is what India has demonstrated here for last 2 years, last 3 years, that despite everything in the world, our manufacturing teams were working on the ground. Our supply team were making sure that the products are available, and the products are dispatched and available not in only in India but globally, and living up to the reputation of India as the pharmacy of the world.
Right. So are you anticipating prices to go up further from here on?
They may go up. They may go up because we are still not very uncertain. Although, and the picture from China is also not absolutely clear here. Uh, so what we have done is we are ensuring that it does not spread in India. That is very, very
Mm.
important, right? So the surveillance mechanism have been increased in India. The COVID appropriate behavior is emphasized. So first task of us is contain that disease process, contain the infection process in India. And second is make sure that our manufacturing operation continues and we make the products available. The prices, I anticipate the turbulence in the API market to continue uh, because so long there's uncertainty of the demand and the demand surge is there. Naturally, and the supply is restrained because the competition on the supply front is relatively less. So I expect turbulence in the API market to
Okay. And by what quantum can we expect a further price uptick?
continue. Very difficult to say, very, very difficult to say because this situation is so uncertain, no one can predict. And
Mm.
the good part of the story is, Hiral, we have learned to live with it. We have developed mechanism in most of the companies that you remember 3 years back. There is a demand uncertainty, there is a supply uncertainty. Uh, but Indian companies made sure overall what we do, we keep high level of inventory to make sure that the medicines are available. We don't know which part of the country, which part of the world the demand goes up because this virus is moving from one place to another. It is infected and the demand goes up all of a sudden and all of a sudden it goes down also. Remember the kind of vaccines which have been built up, but many of them have to be destroyed and because they couldn't be supplied and they expired during that time. But this is part of the business which pharma industry is facing. And thanks to the great contribution of the industry, of the medical profession, of the supply chain people who have made sure that the medicines are available. And we are proud of that fact. Yeah.
Right. So, Mr. Jain, usually, what's the kind of inventory that pharma companies maintain from an API perspective currently on an average?
Three to four.
Okay.
Large companies. I'm talking of large companies. Smaller companies
Mhm.
will find it difficult. Yeah.
Right. So, say for example, currently, if current prices have gone up, still the companies have inventory which could suffice them in terms of Jan, Feb, March. That's the fourth quarter of FY23. But from an FY24 perspective, that's when probably we could see a hit coming in from a profitability and a margin perspective if things worsen.
Okay. Right. And for a smaller operation, he may not be able to keep 3 months inventory.
Hmm.
So he may start getting impacted immediately. And
Right.
like say those companies, they will like to maintain the inventory. So if the prices have gone up, say by 20% at this particular moment, you don't know what will be the price in the month of April, right? It may go up 30% or it may come down depending upon how the COVID situation develops in different
Hmm.
parts of the world. So you in a business, you take that kind of risk. So you may create an inventory which may impact you in the second quarter. However, you keep on monitoring the situation very closely. You keep on evaluating various options and then take business decisions.
Right. And the other aspect over here is that, maybe the supplies are not stopped from China, but because the domestic demand in China itself would increase substantially due to the fresh wave of COVID-19, that they would not want to really continue with this quantum of exports. Then, how do we work out around on the supply front? And what is the alternative for Indian companies?
So during this time, the very basic is that's why you started keeping inventory at a higher level, right? So you presume, and that is what happens in a business kind of thing, 3 to 4 inventory, 3 to 4 months API inventory, 1 or 2 months finished product. So you are covered up for 4 to 5 months, 5 months, right? And then there is a market inventory because some of the stockist distributor will stock it up. So you are covered up for 6 months time. Now, if the situation worsens, then you start working on options and adversity get the best out of the organizations, right? So all the organizations are prepared for the COVID situation. We have been learning. In fact, as an international generic business association where we are members, we are trying to find out from various governments around the world how do they anticipate the incidents, and we are trying to get ourselves prepared for ensuring continuous supply of the medicine.
Right. So, overall, apart from China, what is the other bigger market where India falls back to in terms of purchasing APIs?
Some of the European countries.
Okay. And is there a
But the
major price differential?
dependence on China for antibiotics and vitamins is high. And then the second problem is not API alone, it is intermediates, which are there for making APIs, right? So suppose if we start making paracetamol in this country, and there are many companies which are making paracetamol, then but the intermediates of that paracetamol, that is also very important. But what happens in this kind of situation when the things last longer? There are entrepreneurs which emerge, which start making intermediates as well as finished API formulation, which happened in case of HCQ, hydroxychloroquine, when the demand surged up. Many of the companies which were involved in HCQ, they made sure that they make from end to end, so they don't get dependent on China as far as that supply is concerned. So I'm sure we will find out the solution. I'm also sure that alertness is very important. I'm also very sure, and it is important that there should not be any form of complacency as far as COVID is. Right? COVID is not yet over. The issues are not resolved. We are still in the middle of something. We have to learn from our past experiences and keep on building, both in terms of containing COVID and ensuring that we are well prepared in terms of supply of medicines as well as vaccines.
Right. And Mr. Jain, do you see a possibility of an artificial shortage being created due to a panic situation where manufacturers have started procuring whatever supplies are available in the market? And that's something, which could probably lead to an artificial shortage.
In this kind of situation, it happens. It happened last time, but the government has been very, very particular. They have built up the system to monitor the inventories, to monitor the stock levels. And in fact, in Indian context, we have got Retailers Association, which also played a very important role. Make sure to alert the members that there should not be capitalizing the issue of shortage, right? Nevertheless, despite all the measures you take, it happens. But we have learned hell of a lot from the past situation where there was capitalizing the inventories, unnecessarily checking up the prices of finished products, black marketing of the products. Now, all those we have learned how to contain it. And I'm sure the government is prepared to take all necessary actions if people resort to a behavior which is not in the interest of the patient.
Right. And overall, is there a possibility that we could see that price rise being passed on to consumers? Because to what I understand, there's always a cap to the price rise that you can take over 2 months as per NPM, right?
You cannot pass the price rise to the consumer because for even decontrolled products, you can raise the price maximum 10%,
Hmm.
and you cannot pass the price. So in India, everything is controlled. Uh,
Hmm.
so price rise cannot be passed to the consumer. Only the companies have to bear the cost of the increasing raw material prices.
Right. Overall, if you see, apart from the API angle as well, another instance that we are witnessing right now is with regards to the flu season, which has come in earlier in the US as well, right? Now, because of that, again, there is a good amount of demand that is being generated. And I think what I was reading was that the number of cases in terms of flu has been the highest versus the past 7 to 8 years. Now, taking this scenario into consideration, how are you seeing the Indian companies benefit out of it?
So you are right, and this is a very good point, Hiral, you brought about that the flu season has been picking up, and there's been an increase in the demand of some of the products like amoxicillin, and amoxiclav, which is combination of amoxicillin and clavonic acid. We have requested our member companies and association in those countries if there is spurt in the demand and can we help them out at this moment because we have got the stocks at this particular moment. So we are getting the details of if there are any shortages in those markets. So they get the supplies from US, from Europe, and India are the major suppliers of the finished products. So we are in collaboration with those associations around the world to make sure that we can play the role as the pharmacy of the world.
Right. Overall, what should be the key aspect we should be watching out for, Mr. Jain, from an API market perspective for the pharma sector from here on?
So one is how the COVID surge is taking place in different parts of the world because that will have an impact on the demand. China's situation is very, very important. Uh, how it is shaping up and what will be the impact of the supplies from China. Those are the two important things which we need to take care of. And that's it, because how the demand pattern is there and how the supply pattern. And we have to be very, very vigilant as far as the whole situation is concerned. And all the companies are very vigilant. Let me assure you, Kira, we are in it. That is our role. That is why we are in it. And the great example is cooperation and coordination between the government and the industry and all the stakeholders who facilitate that process that we should be able to supply the medicine to meet the needs of Indian patients. Yes, pricing will be there. I anticipate that there may be increase in the price in a worse kind of situation, but that's it. That's part of the system. At this particular moment, the key priority is to make the medicines available. Yes.
Right. One more aspect I want to consider over here is just this week itself, I think you had the NPPA, which is the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority, which capped the prices of 127 medications. And this is, I think, the second time in a year where a price cap has come in specifically for paracetamol. The prices have gone down. Amoxicillin and potassium clavulanate, the prices have been brought down by the government. So how does this dichotomy work? Because in one way, raw material prices are going up, and on the other side, you have the government which is coming and capping the prices. How would you actually meet ends on this front?
So that's a separate issue. And we have made a representation to the government that there is an increase in the prices of raw materials, and they should be considered while deciding the prices of some of these products. We have got a market-based pricing system, and these products are in NLEM, National Essential List of Medicine. And as per that list, you have to recalculate the price of all these products once in 5 years. And all the products which are more than 1% market share, you have to take the average. Now, what happens, although the price increase was granted in the month of April, but some of those products may not have reached the market, and hence the correct price may not have been taken into consideration while refixing the price. So we are working with the government to find out the best way that this methodology is followed, so the companies are able to have a viable operation for these products and are able to continuously, consistently able to meet the supplies at the marketplace. Because at the end of the day, the companies who are making the products, they would like to make profits on that, because then only you can continue the operation. But if the profits are not there and if the cost has gone up so much that you can't make the product, then you have to talk to the government, make the representation, and continuously follow with them.
Right. And very lastly, overall, from a China plus one strategy, uh, people are moving to India with regards to taking supplies. But when we ourselves are not self-sufficient, how big a market are we expected to create in the next 2 to 3 years on the back of the PLI scheme? What's the total capacity addition we are expected to see according to you?
So we have got 70% dependence on China, 4 to 5 billion,
Correct.
right? Now, it will take time, and according to me, 5 to 7 years to get back. It is not easy that tomorrow you announce the scheme and you get it going. Uh, let's remember, we have lost this advantage in 1990s. We used to make all these APIs, and we didn't take any step. Uh, Last 2 years, this step has been taken in, and we want to get back not only on APIs but also intermediates, which is very, very important, right? So if you are able to make paracetamol, but if you are not able to make intermediates, which are necessary for making paracetamol, so it is an integrated process. And some of the critical areas where there are not multiple suppliers, right? So what we are trying to do is, suppose we are getting a product from China, and if there are suppliers of that particular product in Europe, yes, you are good. Because if something happens in China, you can go to Europe, although the price may be high. But if there is only one supplier for a product, and that too in China, then you have to accelerate, make sure that you are able to do it. And that is good for the world, not only for India. Because how does, in a business, you depend only on one supplier of a product? So we talk of the concept of a diversified supply chain, that you have to have a multiple supplier of a product to make sure that you are able to consistently meet the requirement of the patient in the therapies where you are engaged
Right. So overall, any number that you could give us in terms of what's the overall capacity addition we are seeing in India?
I will not be able to comment at this stage on that. I will not be able to.
Right. And very lastly, from a Europe perspective, as you mentioned earlier, that we fall back on European companies. What's the major price differential between China and Europe?
For some of the products, because it's very difficult to say the price difference, like say India and China, many of the products, if we want to make in India, the cost difference used to be around 25 to 30%, because the cost of financing was less in China. The cost of land is less, the cost of power is less. So with the clusters which the government is talking about, which the government has started in the country, and the APA scheme, both should help, and we should become competitive compared to what we are getting at China. For some of the molecules, yes, China price may be say X, but Europe price may be X plus 10 or X plus 15. But at the end of the day, in manufacturing, we like to go to a lowest supply. So you depend on China because they have built a huge capacity, so their manufacturing will be relatively low. So it's a long-term game. It will not happen as far as the
So short term. Absolutely. All right. Thank you, Mr. Jain. Thank you so much for sharing the information and the knowledge with all of us and the viewers as well. And thank you for your contribution. Thank you. Stay safe and speak to you soon again.
Thank you very much, Hiral, and all the very best, and wishing you happy and healthy new year to all your audiences, because health is fundamental. And
Absolutely.
is
Wish you the same.